Hello, you wonderful people. So for today's video, I wanted to talk about the aspect of secret identities when it comes to superhero stuff, whether it's TV shows and movies. And the reason why I'm bringing it up is just because it's a conversation I've kind of recently brought up when I was talking on the podcast. Specifically, this is about like Arrowverse stuff, so like DC shows in particular, but it also applies to like Marvel too. And it's just kind of an interesting aspect of like, do secret identities play as much of a part of a superhero's life and story in like current media adaptations? Like this is coming from someone who's never really read any comic books, so that's why I'm talking specifically from TV show and movie perspectives. So this is all just stemming from my own experience, because I'm sure in the comic books it still plays a bigger part. But let me just break things down on what I'm talking. You take an example like the MCU movies. Secret identities have not played a big part in them. Like, it's even started with Iron Man. Like, everyone knows that Tony is Iron Man. They've known since the end of Iron Man 1. It's no big secret. And the thing is, the same thing kind of applies to the rest of the MCU too, because no one's like, Captain America wears a mask, but even then, I think most people know if Steve Rogers is Captain America. So that's not much of a whole secret identity aspect for him. It also comes into, I mean, his situation is a little different because he's kind of a man out of time, so that's a whole thing in itself. But I think it also coincides with the question that most people have too. Like, it's something that even I'm not 100% sure on. Is like, do most people know that Bruce Banner is the Hulk? Because most times you just see the Hulk, so it's like, I'm wondering, do people put that connection? Do people know that whole situation or not? But nevertheless, the first superhero in the MCU to really do that is Spider-Man. And because I grew up on watching a lot of Spider-Man cartoons, and I know that's a big part of Spider-Man's story, of balancing that Peter Parker life with his Spider-Man life. That's like, it's a very crucial aspect of his story. And I mean, obviously I believe Homecoming captured that very beautifully, but I think Spider-Man currently in that universe is the only one who has that. Maybe Black Panther, but I feel like everyone saw his face in Civil War. Granted, it's been a while, so I might be remembering that wrong. And I'm curious to see how that ties into Black Panther as well, the movie. I'm curious, will it be like everyone knows that the King of Wakanda is Black Panther, or is it just going to be a situation of only those closest to him? Because there are people in the trailer who see him, you know, in the suit. So it's like, oh, probably, like I said, it's probably going to be a situation of not all his people know, or maybe his people do know. I don't know. We just kind of have to wait and see on that whole regard, how they handle that, whether like he will even feel the need to have a secret identity. The question I'm stemming from all of this, is it important? Because it's like, because it is completely absent from like the MCU movies. Like I said, a lot of the characters they've set up, it's not really 100% necessary, but I think with who they are, like there's certain heroes they've set up that is like going back to Iron Man. I think, I could be wrong about this, maybe a majority of people do know that he's Tony Stark in the comic book, but most adaptations of things I've seen, it's always been like, well, Tony's always kept his identity secret. People know that Iron Man's connected to Stark Industries, but they don't know that it's specifically Tony inside of the suit. Obviously, with the exceptions of some bad guys, but it's not like public knowledge, you know? And then let's talk about kind of like the flip side of things, and that's the DC, you know, whether it's the Arrowverse on CW, or is it like the DCEU movies. Even then, like, secret identities play a part in those too. Like, for example, you have like, obviously Barry's gonna have his identity because he's wearing a suit and a mask. Same thing for Batman. And even the show, and even the trailers, they've shown that Wonder Woman does the same thing too. She has like a secret identity, which is weird to me, because most times when, like, prior to these movies, I've never really known much about Wonder Woman. My experience with Wonder Woman has always been like the Justice League cartoons, and then you never saw, I mean, to my recollection, there might have been episodes, but to my recollection, you always saw her as Wonder Woman. You never saw her as Diana Prince, you know, her whole secret identity thing. So, and even Batman, like, I'm sure that plays a big part in his stories too, but for me, my experience has always been like, even for most animated series I've ever seen, I'm sure there's others that handle it, but it's like, I can only think of a few, like the Batman and maybe Batman from like the animated series from the 90s have done that, but I feel like him as Bruce Wayne never played a big part, because it is about Batman. That's always been the big focus of those. I think one adaptation, like one material that's done it well that I'm familiar with is Telltale. I think they did a very good job of making the Bruce Wayne aspects interesting, just like the Batman aspect, kind of showing you that duality of like, some situations call for Batman, some situations call for Bruce Wayne. And I feel like, I don't know, like I said, I don't vividly remember that from other things. I'm sure it's there, I just don't remember it. And then obviously you also take something like Superman in the DCEU, but that situation is a little different too, because like he plays it up a little bit, but it never gets a lot of time in play in like the movies, you know, because he's like the whole Clark Kent Superman identity thing doesn't play a part at all in like Man of Steel until like the very end. And then even then it's like, well, Lois already knows who you are from the very beginning now, so because she knew him as Superman before she knew him as Clark Kent, which was always kind of a back and forth between them in the comic books, as well as other adaptations and stuff. But even then, even Batman v Superman, it never came up too much. So it's like, I feel like that's an aspect that's not even 100% there in the DCEU, but I mean, who knows, like maybe given enough time they'll be able to do that. But I mean, I don't know how much of a role, like I said, how much of a role that would play going forward. Then you take something like the Arrowverse, where it plays a slightly bigger role in certain regards. Like you take someone like Oliver Queen, Green Arrow, or you take Kara Danvers, Supergirl, it definitely plays a bigger role for them. I mean, because Flash, it plays a certain extent, like obviously it was a bigger part of season 1, played a certain part in season 2, mainly with the whole Patty situation, but subsequently since then it hasn't really played too much of a role in certain regards, but it's never like an overarching thing. And it definitely isn't a thing at all in Legends of Tomorrow, which I didn't even think about, like, because I've recently, this whole thing came up as a conversation, I've just randomly turned into tangents on like, when I've been talking about like the Arrowverse TV shows, like how like, oh yeah, like the whole secret identity thing doesn't play that much of a role for certain shows, especially Legends, because they're time traveling. I guess they never really feel the need to hide their identity, which is kind of interesting to me. You know, like, so I mean, Legends is kind of its own thing, but amongst those shows, I feel like it plays the biggest role in Arrow and Supergirl. They struggled the most with this whole dual identity situation, especially if you caught up the current seasons of both shows. You do realize that, like, you know, I mean, this is kind of a spoiler, but I mean, it's kind of already been a thing for like a season, so, but the whole Oliver having to balance the whole being mayor and a superhero vigilante, which obviously if you're caught up on Arrow currently in this season, then you know that's not currently 100% true, but like I said, I won't get into it, spoilers and everything. But for Kara, like, for better or worse, there's that duality, and sometimes she feels like it causes a lot of problems. Like, I feel like out of anyone, she has to deal with it the most. Oliver kind of has to as well, but I think he has a foundation that helps him deal with it maybe better. I don't know, he's had enough experience kind of having to lie to people about his identity and everything, so it might be a little easier for him than it is Kara. It's still, you know, I was like, oh, where were you? I was like, I was yeah, you know, that still plays a role, which it's kind of an interesting thing, because it's something I never really thought about until someone put in perspective of me, like when it comes to DC heroes, when it comes to them, who they are when they're wearing their mask, when they're being all superhero, no matter who they are, that's the real them in comparison to their secret identity, which is in actuality the mask. Like, you use Batman for example. Batman is who Bruce Wayne really is, but when, you know, he puts on the mask and becomes Bruce Wayne, you know, it's just kind of an interesting thing, like I'd never really thought of before. And I feel like that definitely plays a role, definitely in Arrow, because that's always been a thing Oliver's trying to decide, like, which is the real me, you know, because he struggles so much, because trying to be that vigilante superhero is always, he's like, this is who I am, and Oliver Queen has been a mask. So it definitely plays a role in that, and it definitely plays a role in Supergirl too, especially this current season, when like everything Kara went through season 2, like how it ended and everything. Obviously won't go into spoilers if you're not caught up, but it makes her question the whole Kara Danvers thing. To her, it's like, Supergirl is who I really am, Kara Danvers is just a mask. But there's that aspect of her of like, no, both sides of these people, Kara Danvers and Supergirl, are me. They're just two sides of the same coin, and I feel like they handle it in a very interesting way, like that I feel like only happens in Supergirl. Like I said, it's just like every show and every like superhero thing has its own way of handling it, and I don't know, I think it's fascinating when you actually break it down. I mean, ultimately my question to you is, do you think the whole secret identity thing is necessary anymore? Once again, this is coming from a TV show and movie perspective. I'm not including the comic books, because I'm sure that still plays a prevalent role, but like, my question to you is, do you enjoy that aspect? Do you think like, no, it shouldn't be included, like you're like, no, just give me all the superhero stuff? Or do you feel like, no, I need that too, because that plays a role in their story, it humanizes them, this particular hero in a certain regard? Do you want your superhero like humanized, and you're like, no, I don't want none of that boring human like secret identity stuff, give me the superhero stuff. That's all I care about. Because me personally, like, I probably, when I was younger, I definitely would have been like, nah, I don't care about all that boring, like, person stuff, your secret identity stuff. Like, no, be superhero 24/7. That's all I care about. But now that I've gotten older, I've come to appreciate that. That's what I love the most about those, like, TV shows like Arrow and Supergirl, and what I love most about Spider-Man is that struggle with both lives, that duality, you know, trying to find that balance between, oh, is this the real you as a superhero? Is this you as a person? Is there enough room in your life for both, or will you have to sacrifice one for the other? Like, as I've gotten older, I've come to appreciate and love that aspect even more. So that's my opinion on this whole subject. I'd love to get yours about it. But really, that's all I want to talk about in this video. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.